We've been trying to glean from the Lord's Prayer issues that strengthen our life, that give us the ability to maintain a high standard of hope amid times when hopelessness seems to be abounding. These are the things that we have covered, how each of those phrases gives us a particular life focus that maintains hope, regardless of what goes on around us. Today we're going to move from the phrase, lead us not into temptation, which we covered last week, into, but deliver us from evil. So I want to begin with this question. Do you feel safe? It's hard to believe it's almost, 20 years, 19 years ago that some terrorists piloted 2 planes into the Twin Towers in New York City. Do you feel safe? Home security has advanced where now you don't need to run wires. You can use this wireless Bluetooth system. Do you feel safe? Neighborhoods have formulated neighborhood watches where a whole bunch of Mrs. Kravitzes sit around and spy on everybody. And if you didn't get that, then you're too young. Riots and protests. Do you feel safe? Bullying, a major issue at school when maybe it did not used to be so much. Do you feel safe? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I bet there's some pepper spray in purses in this room today. Why? I'll bet there's some of you even have a concealed carry permit. Why? Maybe some of you have taken defensive training. Do you feel safe? Quote here from early days of COVID, March 25th. Chief Deputy Todd Duncan of Lancaster County said, "We are seeing up to 100 permits for guns a day." In contrast, typically it's 10 to 15. Why? Why? Do you feel safe? And of course, then there's the never-ending question of to mask or not to mask, which puts us all in a place where we're asking ourselves continually, am I safe? Am I safe? You know, the thing about safety is that all this stuff that's going on means that few of us have a very high level of feeling safe. And it's just a matter of a small step to go from not feeling safe into being controlled by fear. It's a small step. It's a fine line. And by the way, all of these pictures are from our wonderful Midwest city, Lincoln, Nebraska. You feel safe? Hope is lost when we surrender to fear. On any level, we lose hope if we surrender to fear. And so we come to this phrase in the model prayer, deliver us from evil. And what we are really focusing on in that phrase is not just, again, something to pray, but the principle that our lives are lived within the power of God. How can we fear what men will do to us? You see, this principle of the power of God gives us hope that conquers our fear. Oh, and that's not saying we're never going to be afraid, but what I'm saying is there's an answer. There's an answer to fear. The original word that is used in that model prayer, deliver us, carries with it the idea of a hasty aggression. It's actually from a root word that means to rush or to draw or to rescue, and it's closely akin to the Greek word that means to flow or to run. The idea is we've got this torrent of water. And so what Jesus is saying is when we are tempted to allow fear to control us, we need to ask God to send this torrent of water that's going to take us away from that controlling fear, from that evil. This rushing rescue is from the evil, or some translations, because of manuscript discrepancy, translated evil one, and both are absolutely fine and both mean the same thing. The word actually has multiple definitions. It basically just means anything that's nasty. Rescue us from anything that's hurtful, that's degenerate, that's calamity, that's illness, that's immoral, that's derelict, that's vicious, that's malicious. Rescue us from that. I could not help but this morning is hearing the prayers that were offered, and we're praying for people's health. You know really what we're praying for? God's torrent to rescue from evil. That's what we're praying for. Now, we may not think that I'm praying, God, rescue me from evil all the time, but when we're asking God to do certain things, we're actually asking Him to rescue us from this evil, this world of evil. The instruction of Jesus is to seek the quick and rushing, rescuing power of God when all types of evil are encountered. I want to examine 4 realities of seeking God's rescue. Number 1, we should be mindful of evil, but not overwhelmed by it. You know, it's one thing to know that evil exists. It's one thing to know that it may not be the smartest thing at 10 o'clock a few weeks ago to decide you're going to walk downtown Lincoln. That may not, it's one thing to know that something's going on, but it's another thing to be controlled by the fear that might cause. So we need to be mindful of evil, but not controlled by it. I love this passage in Romans chapter 12. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Try to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible on your part, live at peace with everyone. But then verse 21, don't you love the way this just says it? Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. We know what evil is, but it's not going to conquer us. It's not going to control us. We're not going to live by that kind of controlling fear because we live with the power of God. We live with the power of God. Satan's realm is in conflict with believers. The world is his. This is his kingdom. Numerous occasions in Scripture we find out that he is the ruler of darkness, that this is the kingdom of darkness. This is his realm. Ephesians chapter 2, Paul describes what we once were. We were all dead in our trespasses and sins. We walked in those according to the worldly age, according to the ruler of the atmospheric dominion, the spirit now working in the disobedient. This world is Satan's. It's his realm. It's where he exercises his evil. We too previously lived among them in our fleshly desires, carrying out the inclinations of our flesh and thoughts, and by nature we were children under wrath as others were also. So that's what we once were. Jesus warned his followers, if they're going to engage in his work in this world, there's going to be a certain reaction to that. He told them, look, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be shrewd as serpents and as harmless as doves. We know about evil. We're shrewd. We comprehend the way evil works. But we have the spirit of harmlessness, of doves. Because people, he says, will hand you over to the Sanhedrin and flog you in their synagogues. Beware of them. We know evil. We've got to understand the nature of evil. You will even be brought before governors and kings because of me, to bear witness of them and to the nations. Our political powers may become the very evil that we have to fight against. That's what Jesus is preparing us for. He's saying, I'm sending you out. You need to be smart, but you also need to be innocent. Satan works against the truth of God. Jesus in Mark chapter 6, as he talks about the sower, he says he went forth and he sows. And these are the ones, he says, along the path where the word is sown, where they hear, and immediately Satan comes and takes away the word that is sown in them. Satan, the ruler of this world, is not going to allow the seed of God to be sown freely. He doesn't like that. And so he works through his kingdom to do everything contrary to the work and to the truth of God. Jesus and those following him are superior to Satan's evil. Again, it's important for us to know evil, but it's also important for us to keep evil in perspective. John 16 and verse 33, Jesus says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have what? Peace. You will have suffering in this world. Earlier, I asked you if you felt safe. There are any number of times that any of us don't feel safe. But feeling safe is different than feeling at peace, right? And Jesus says, I'm giving you peace. I'm giving you peace. Be courageous because I have conquered the world. And then John will say in 1 John 5, because whatever has been born of God conquers the world. This is the victory that has conquered the world, our faith. And who is the one who conquers the world, but the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. It is faith that leads us to conquering evil. We can be at peace because of our faith, not because of our nation, not because of our police department, not because of the mace in my purse. Those things don't make us feel safe. Jesus gives us peace. And that peace is bigger than safety. So we need to understand evil exists, but we understand that it does not conquer. Number 2, deliverance from evil demands a very high level of lowly living. If I'm going to be delivered from this conquering negativity and hopelessness of evil, I'm going to have to humble myself. That's the way it's going to happen. God's strength is only available when one is aware of their humble and personal need that they have. When unyielding spirits face evil, they will do it on their own. If I'm going to try to just create safety for myself and my own personal peace, it's not going to be there. I'll do it alone. However, when I choose to humble my spirit and face evil, when I do that, I'm doing it with the backing of God behind me, with the power of Jehovah. Peter will say, and all of you who clothe yourselves with humility toward one another because God resists the proud. Now that's the same word that James will use when he says we should do what to the devil? Resist him, and he'll flee from you. Now Peter is here saying that if I don't humble myself, God resists me. God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time. God becomes my power. God becomes my peace. He becomes that which conquers all of the fear in this world. James says, therefore, submit to God, but resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, sinners, and purify your hearts, double-minded people. Be miserable, mourn, and weep. Your laughter must change to mourning, and your joy to sorrow. Humble yourselves, therefore, before the Lord, and he will exalt you. You see, James says, there's got to be a change in me before God can exalt me. And the change is I have to lower myself. I have to humble myself. Every believer is vulnerable to evil, just like Paul, who in Romans chapter 7, he said, nothing good lives in me, that is, in my flesh. And he says, I practice the evil that I do not want to do. We all have this flesh. You see, our flesh is always ready to engage in evil. That's the nature of flesh, just like evil is the nature of the world. Our flesh is always ready to do evil. But what Paul is saying is, I've got this flesh, and I haven't ever escaped this flesh, so even though I'm a person of God, I'm a saved individual, my flesh still longs for that evil. So there's nothing good in me. What is good is what God does in me and through me and to me. That's Paul's point. Number 3, strength in resisting evil is found in numbers. It's interesting in this prayer, Jesus does not say, deliver me from evil. He says, deliver us. There's a body. There's a group going on here. There's a connectivity. It's vital when facing the fears and the unknowns of evil to understand that we are not alone. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to humanity. God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will provide a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. The part I want to focus on in that verse is the phrase, such as is common to humanity. Some translations, such as is common to man. What's interesting is that's a single word in the Greek language. That whole phrase is just one word. And that single word actually just means human. That's all it means. It is the word from which we get anthropomorphic, human-centered. The word from which we get anthropology, the study of the human body. It just means human. What God tells us is there is no temptation that Dan has that isn't just plain human. And there's not one Sam has that isn't just human. There's nothing special about mine. But you know what happens when evil gets working on me is I want to think, oh man, nobody else has to deal with this one. You know, who else in here is a preacher? You know, nobody's got to deal with this one like me. But you know what Scripture says? No, that's not right. They'll say, oh, you know what, I'm a woman. Nobody has to deal with what I have to deal with. Oh, I'm single. I have to deal with what? No. Nothing, no temptation takes on any person but what every other person doesn't have, and I'm going to say it, the same kind of temptation. Same kind of evil. Be sober, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour. Resist him, firm in the faith. And then, you know, we kind of stop there. Get this mental image of Satan. Give me a Christian. I'm hungry. Resist him. Resist him, firm in the faith. What does it help me be firm in the faith? Knowing that the same sufferings are being experienced by your brothers in the world. While specifics may hold some variance, the truth is that all evil works on each of us in exactly the same fashion. Exactly. Doesn't matter what the evil is, it all works the same way. This makes none of us unique, and it also offers us all a collective opportunity to give aid, to give grace to every other believer, because guess what? It works in their life just like it does in mine. The things I'm blind to in my walk, they may be blind to in their walk. There is so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that it behooves none of us to pass judgment on the rest of us. The evil world and its ruler uses the same game plan to entice all humanity. And God gave it to us. He said, here's how it works. Here's how every form of evil and trial is going to be dumped on you, because everything that belongs to the world. Now remember what the world is. Everything that belongs in this evil, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life in one's lifestyle is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world in its lust is passing away, but the one who does God's will remains forever. It does not matter what evil, what temptation we are talking about, it works on every one of us in one of those three ways. It either appeals to what we see, it appeals to our flesh, or it appeals to our ego. You can talk about jealousy, you can talk about adultery, you can talk about every form of evil, and every one of them works in one of those three fashions. That's how it works. That's why Jesus can say, know how evil works, but don't be overcome by it. We are not in this alone. Every one of us endure the same fashion of trial. We understand evil, but are not made fearful by it. We assume a lowly posture to enable the greatness of God to lift us out of evil, and we know that we are not alone. While those things help prepare us to battle our world of evil, let's close this morning by looking at a couple specific tools for preparation in our stand against the schemes of the evil one. When we are asking God to send a torrent to rescue us from evil, there are some things that we need to do to prepare ourselves for that rescue. One of those is we need to be in the Word. We need to be in the Word. A few years ago, I think it was Landon Saunders, gave an illustration of this huge Sunday buffet at a restaurant. Just 20 feet of nothing but food. Clean plates, all the instructions. And you grabbed your plate and you started to go through this huge line, this huge buffet, but every container had regurgitated food in it. So you looked at this one, don't think so. Looked at it, no, I don't think. The whole thing, nothing but regurgitated. That's vomit, right? And then he said, if the only time you're in this is when you're sitting in a pew at church, guess what you're eating spiritually? Regurgitated spiritual food. If the only time you're in the Word is when you hear somebody else talk about it, then you're just getting their vomit. Now, you try to make it as good as you can, but we need to be in the Word, not just because we've got a reading schedule. We need to be in the Word because that's what assists us in this whole struggle against evil. When the fullness of evil came knocking on Jesus' door, he found the ability to resist in what? It is written. When the Son of God went toe-to-toe with the prince of evil, he said, it is written. Why not say, hey, I am the Son of God. Who do you think you are? No, it is written. Folks, if it was strength for him in his time of evil, it is for us too. We need to be in the Word. I have sought you with all my heart, David says. Don't let me wander from your commands. I have treasured your word in my heart so that I may not sin against you. I want you to notice the way that David put this together. You cannot say that you love God if you're not putting his word in your heart. Because David said, I love you, God. And because I love you, I put your word in my heart. Because I don't want to sin against you. God's word is alive, it's effective, it's piercing, it's dividing, it's judging, and it even gets down to the intentions of our heart and our mind. Hebrews chapter 4. The Spirit's sword is our battle armor against Satan's schemes. Ephesians chapter 6. Another vital tool is the preparatory tool of prayer. Through prayer, Paul found God's strength and grace in combating a thorn in his flesh. Don't know what it was, but it's what? It's the evil in his flesh. He says it came from Satan. Can't be good. Whatever it was, physical, mental, whatever it was, Paul took it to God. And he did that consistently until he understood God's answer. And when he understood God's answer, he didn't have to ask anymore because he knew that his weakness made him strong. Wednesday night studied the Gospel of Mark. There is a description in Mark of a young man who follows the disciples as they go to the garden. A young man who covers himself in a bed sheet and sneaks off to see what's going on. Shared in that class time that it may be possible that Mark actually, because he's hiding, he's not out in the open, he's not with everybody else, he's hiding. It may have been that Mark actually heard Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane. Peter, James, and John have been left behind, and he goes a little bit farther. We know they didn't hear. Why? Because they decided to go to sleep. But it's possible that John Mark may have heard when Jesus said, let this cup pass from me. So these words recorded by him may have extra emphasis from his heart. Then he went a little further and he fell to the ground and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. Nonetheless, not that I will, but what you will, Jesus prayed. Then he came and he found them sleeping, Peter, James, and John. Couldn't you stay awake an hour? Stay awake and pray. Why? Jesus didn't say, so So God will strengthen me. Pray for me. I need your prayer. That isn't what Jesus said. He said, pray that you may not what? Enter into temptation. Prayer is a preparatory tool when we face evil. Jesus knew that. He told Peter, James, and John to do it that way. But then he says, you know what? We got the same problem Paul had. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. For a believer, the world may never be a safe place, but it can be a secure place. Because I comprehend the nature of evil. Evil just is evil. I also understand that I need to be humble enough to know that I can't combat evil. I can't conquer it. That if I want to be exalted to a place of peace and safety above all that the world has, I need to humble myself and let God do the exalting. I need to also understand that whatever comes my way is not unique. The world is filled with humans undergoing the same thing. And then I have some powerful tools to help me in preparation, and two of those are to be in the Word and to be prayerful.